The Arizona State Sun Devils are not just primed to repeat success in 2025, but they're going to make a more legitimate title run.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the show. I got a fun one for you guys today. And in the spirits of the national title game on Monday, by the way, on Monday, I will be taking a look at Ohio State and Notre Dame and seeing what ASU can copy from them to win a natty next year. Make sure you turn on notifications so you get that one. But today, we got to talk about why, even right now, ASU is ready for a title run. I want to talk about the returning players, returning coaches, the transfers, the youngsters, before we talk about how the Big 12 is probably the key to winning it, before we round out the show with what needs to get better for ASU. Let's take a look at this team. My goodness. This is where it starts, ladies and gentlemen. It starts with having the roster that ASU has. Over 50 players from this past team. First team, second team, depth players. 50 players are returning. There's some key players back too. Sam Leavitt, by far the most important player that is returning for the Sun Devils in 2025. His redshirt freshman year was nothing short of magical. First half of the year, it was like pretty darn good. It was like, okay, there's a lot to work with. Second half of the year, you're like, okay, this kid is special. He's back. Jordyn Tyson, number one receiver, he's back. They've got almost the entire running back room. Now, you do have to replace Cam Scadaboo. That will not be easy, but it's not impossible with the guys that are returning. Kyson Brown, the most important among those guys, in my opinion. You've also got 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line. Shimon Mateo, your starting tight end, is back. Defensively, pretty much the whole defense. You have to replace Caleb McCullough. You have to replace Jeff Clark, Shamari Simmons, and a handful of other guys as well. Those are the 3 biggest replacements that you face. That being said, you're deep on the edge with Clayton Smith, Prince Dorbah, Elijah O'Neal. You still have 3 defensive tackles, CJ Fight, Jacob Richcon-Gaika, and Zach Swanson. Linebacker, you're just fine. You've got Keyshawn Elliott returning. He is one of the most important returners on this team, by the way. You've got Zyrus Viaseu. You've got Tate Romney, who should be healthy, and Jordan Crook. In the secondary, Xavion Alford, the leader, heart and soul of this team, is back. Miles Rouser is back. They're going to man the safety spot. Keith Abney, Javen Robinson, your number 1, number 2 corners are back as well. They are returning so many of the most important players to this team from last year into this year. You're also, by the way, returning pretty much your entire coaching staff. At worst, you've got Kenny Dillingham coming back, who is obviously the face of this program right now. Look how quickly he's turned around ASU. Going into his 3rd season, we're talking about national title expectations. We were probably supposed to go into year 3 talking about, oh, well, maybe they can get 7 wins this year. Maybe they can get 8 wins this year, like run the table and have something magical. Nope. We're looking at potentially another double-digit win season, potentially winning the Big 12 again, and potentially going to the college football playoff, where now that this team has a taste of what it takes to win at that kind of level, they might be better off for it. They're also bringing back both of their coordinators, offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo and defensive coordinator Brian Ward. Phenomenal. Look at the success that Arroyo had this year with Sam Leavitt. They're going to have another year to develop together. It's terrific. You look at the Ben Baldwin era in his first year with the Sun Devils in 2023, did not work. Kenny Dillingham took over play calling duties less than a month into the year. This past year, Marcus Arroyo was brilliant. Don't get me wrong, there was definitely some questionable stuff, none more so than in the Peach Bowl against Texas, where you were stuffed inside of the 5-yard line of Texas in their territory twice on 4th down. That could have changed the game definitively. That to me was the changing point of that game. Not the penalties, not anything else. It was those 2 drives, neither here nor there. But he's back. And considering how great he was for the entirety of the season outside of probably the first half of the Peach Bowl before they got things figured out, that's huge. Brian Ward, you listen to this podcast, you know this is a Brian Ward fan show. He is terrific. He has really turned this defense around very, very quickly. They went from a run over unit in 2022. 2023, his first year in the desert. More than quality. They played way better than the box score showed. And then this past year, they were dominant. They were terrific. Even with some bigger games that they allowed to, like some of the running backs in the Big 12, they won a lot of football games because of that defense stepping up and forcing turnovers and getting off the field when it mattered most. All of that is back. Assistant coaches, they're all set to return. So Jason Mons at tight ends coach. Hines Ward, your wide receivers coach. Sean Aguano, your running backs coach. AJ Cooper, your defensive lines coach. Brian Carrington, your defensive backs coach. As of right now, everyone is expected to return. That could change because there's still holes in college football that need to be filled. And we saw that last year. Was Rashad Samples, your wide receivers coach, left in the spring because Oregon offered a better opportunity. But as of right now, with a lot of spots being filled up already, ASU is set to return their entire coaching staff, over 50 players from this past year's team, majority of their starters, or at least majority of the rotational pieces as well. Look at what they did in the transfer portal. They add Kanye Udo, the stud running back from Army, who is about to be the next in a long line of stud transfer running backs for ASU. Look at the last 5 to 6 seasons. You've had Rashad White, you've had Xavion Valladay, you've had Cam Skataboo. They just get it done with their transfer portal running backs. Those are 3 guys that have had terrific success at ASU. One of them who is going into his 4th season in the NFL. One of them in Skataboo, who is going to be an all-time legend. Now, I'm not saying Udo is going to be those guys, but the trajectory that he's looking at and the recency of the success that ASU has had, well, that's pretty good indication that they're going to be setting him up in a spot where he's going to have repeat success next year. You got Jalen Moss coming in. I expect him to be your number 2 receiver. Do not forget about Noble Johnson was one of their ads, and Jaron Hamilton was another ad as well through the transfer portal for their wide receivers. They attacked the secondary. Kendrick Breedlove, Nyland Green, Adrian Wilson are the 3 guys in the secondary I am most excited about. Jesus Gomez is going to be your brand new kicker. And with any luck, he can be the one who actually, consistently is able to put this team in positions where they can score points on every drive and not have to worry about everything being 4th and go to score touchdowns because you couldn't kick field goals last year. He's pretty darn good. And he's the reason that Kenny Dillingham is here. Fun fact. Look into that rabbit hole. That's a really fun one. A lot of good transfers that are added. And then there's lots of youngsters to watch too. Now, I don't want to repeat guys that we all know who they are, like Kyson Brown, CJ Fight, Keith Abney, guys that have been with the program for 3 years now, and all 3 of them are in positions where they are basically starters. And Kyson Brown, who is running back 2, has a chance to be running back 1 this upcoming year. All 3 of them are primed for big opportunities. You've got Cam Dyer and AJ Ia that are coming in as true freshmen. Jaden Fortier and Jason Brown are redshirt freshmen. These are guys that are young, they're talented, and it's going to be really hard to keep them off of the field. ASU has been a team in the 2 years under Kenny Dillingham that has been so strong because of the way that they have attacked the transfer portal. And they've been able to bring in these veterans, and they've been able to bring in really talented football players that built up the roster, built up the culture, and were able to help the youngsters develop. Year 3, we're going to see those youngsters on the field. We're going to see the true juniors inherit massive roles. Some of them who already have had very big roles. You're going to see the freshmen potentially get on the field. I would be very surprised if at least Cam Dyer and AJ Ia didn't see big roles on the field, but Jaden Fortier, Jason Brown, I'm really looking forward to them as well. There's a lot of good stuff that's going on with this team right now, from the core that is returning to the youngsters ready to step up to the coaching staff that's back and a really good transfer class. ASU, they're in a really, really good spot when you look at the foundation of this team to make a very, very serious run to the college football playoff. But the easiest way for them to get there is winning the Big 12 conference. Is that going to be easy? Well, I don't really know, but we are going to take a look at that coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This message and this podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports, whether it's the playoffs or regular season. PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players. If you pick heads, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yep, you heard me. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Like for me, I'm all about those hot takes. I'm obviously a Baltimore Ravens fan. I'm looking at Lamar Jackson and 250 passing yards coming up against the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. I like it. Travis Kelce's really interesting. Can he get 70 receiving yards against the Texans? Well, those are some of the ones that I'm taking a look at, and it's really fun to predict and play. And of course, with PrizePicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this fantasy season? Then you need to download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. That's right, just $50 for playing when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. Thanks as always for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. The Sun Devils' best opportunity to get back into the college football playoff is winning the Big 12. Starting off there, is that right, wrong, indifferent? I don't know. I think that your resume should speak for itself. Unfortunately, the Big 12 doesn't have the best rep. ASU pretty much only got into the playoff because they won the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State, who finished second, they didn't sniff it. BYU, Colorado, two teams that were terrific, also didn't sniff it. I'm convinced the only reason ASU made it was because they won their conference, which gave them an automatic bid. You might have to do the same thing this upcoming year, because I don't know that the perspective of the Big 12 is going to be changing across the nation. And again, that's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not saying that it should be that way, but it probably is that way. Maybe you can get that to change if ASU repeats their success, if BYU and Colorado and Iowa State repeat their success. Those are your top four teams. Maybe Baylor takes a step forward. TCU takes a step forward. Maybe Oklahoma State is able to rebound. Utah can rebound. Like, there are teams here that are capable of making the Big 12 a very competitive and talented conference. Kansas is another one of those teams. Keep an eye out for Houston. I really am very interested. Oh, Texas Tech. I can't not mention Texas Tech. Whew, that's going to be a good football team. There's a lot of great competition in the Big 12. But as we know from being in the Pac-12, that's not always the best thing, because it turns into a conference that eats each other alive. You know, one week ASU is the best team in the Big 12. And then the next week they lose to Baylor. And it's like, oh, well, maybe Baylor's the best. But then 2 weeks later, Baylor loses to Colorado. And it's like, was Colorado the best? Nope. Colorado just lost to ASU. And it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? Who's the best team in the Big 12? We don't know. And then we get to the end of the year and it's like, well, we can only give one Big 12 team and an entry and a bid into the college football playoff. So right, wrong, or indifferent, that's probably what ASU and the rest of the Big 12 is looking at right now, unless you have two teams that win 11 games. And even then, that'd be tough. Let's take a look at the schedule. How winnable is the schedule for ASU? Real quick, just looking at their non-conference, they should be able to go 3-0. They're hosting NAU. They're hosting Texas State. They're visiting Mississippi State. 3 very winnable games. 3 games that if you don't win one of them, I am going to question whether or not you can contend. Flat out, you need to start the year 3-0. Let's take a look at the home games this year. ASU has 7 total home games, 5 total road games. 4 of their road games will be from the what's it called? The Big 12. And 5 of their home games will be from the Big 12. You are hosting this year Arizona, Texas Tech, TCU, Houston, West Virginia. You are visiting Baylor, Colorado, Iowa State, Utah. That's a lot of really good teams. Now, unfortunately, you don't get your shot at BYU again because Lord knows they will not stop talking and they will continue going until the day they die. Whatever. You don't get K-State, who is always going to be a good team. You don't see Kansas, which I think that they're definitely going to be in for a rebound this upcoming year. They lost their offensive coordinator. They were going to have a setback. You look at the second half of the year, and Jayden Daniels was really able to figure it out. I think Kansas is going to be fine. But let's look at the teams that they do play right now that feel very, very tough and like your prove it games. Hosting Texas Tech, hosting TCU. Texas Tech, I just mentioned them, and I'm gonna talk about them a lot this offseason. That is a good football team. And they look like they are going to be better than they were this past year because Baron Morton is back at quarterback, and sure, they lose Micah Hudson to the portal, but he didn't even see the field anyway. Taj Brooks, that is a huge loss. Jalen Conyers is a tough loss as well. But they've got guys that they've added through the portal. A ton of 4 stars through the transfer portal. That's big for them to be able to get those guys. The defense is only going to continue to get better. They improved this past year. They've got great coaching. They've got a great program. They are building something right now. You get to host them. They were your first loss last year and one of 2 losses that you had in the Big 12. This is going to be a get-back game for ASU. This is going to be one that you circle very early on. I'm not a betting man that much, at least. I would not be surprised if this was your opening game to the Big 12 this upcoming year. Once again, the way it was this past year. TCU is really good, man. Sonny Dykes, phenomenal head coach, and they are retooling that team. They took a big step back after their Cinderella run to the national title game where they got crushed against Georgia, but I still look at that TCU team and I'm like, they're not as far off as people want to think they are. They had a lot of retooling to do, but they're right back there. They made a pretty good run in the regular season this past year. I think they're back. 3 road games that are tough: Baylor, Iowa State, Colorado. Iowa State, Colorado, where Iowa State was your runner-up. Colorado, I have the standings in front of me. They finished 4th in the Big 12 behind Iowa State and BYU. Those are good teams. Now, Colorado will be dependent on whether or not Deion Sanders is back. There's a whole lot of smoke in the air right now that he could go to the pros. I'm keeping my nose out of it. I don't have a dog in that fight. Personally, I would like him to stay because I think it makes your conference better and it makes it much more newsworthy, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, is going to help when it comes to the college football playoff, as people are going to want to talk about the Big 12 because, well, Deion Sanders is there and Arizona State's better and BYU is better and blah, 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 blah. Keep him at Colorado. Going to Boulder is not going to be easy. If Deion is still there and they got some good quarterbacks coming in, it's going to be really interesting to see how you stack up with them. Iowa State, they're going to be looking for revenge. They've got a good core returning to that roster. I do expect them to take a step back, but you're going to Ames. Ames is not going to be an easy place to play. And then Baylor, I think, you know what? Yeah, I'll give a hot take. I will give a hot take. Baylor is the biggest threat to ASU in the Big 12 going into next year. Whew, that's going to piss off some BYU fans. Baylor is the biggest threat to ASU in the Big 12 going into the next year. We'll see if my opinion changes, but right now, and I've thought about this a little bit, Baylor's a good football team, man. They got a great quarterback coming back. They got coaching that was able to rebound. Dave Aranda was coaching for his job, and, well, looks like he's going to be just fine. That is a great team. So I look at the schedule, and I don't know if I call it as daunting as this past year's was, because we know that ASU is a much better team compared to last year when we went into it. We're like, you got to play the top 5 teams in the conference. I don't know how you do it. Turns out ASU was better than we thought, and they were just better than the rest of the conference. Going into this year, I think it's kind of similar. You are facing some of the better teams. The difference is you are the top dogs in the conference. You don't get BYU this year. That's really unfortunate because if it's not Baylor, it's BYU as the biggest contender for the Big 12 against ASU. That's okay, though, because Texas Tech, they're a huge sleeper this year. I think Texas Tech is going to be ginormous this upcoming year. TCU scares me. Baylor definitively scares me. We'll see about the rest of the conference as well. Best case scenario for ASU, I think 10-2 is probably within their realm of possibilities. I don't see you sweeping the conference this year. You should start 3-0, and if you don't start 3-0, I'm going to be really close to out, at least to start the year, on your chances to win the Big 12. You just have to turn it around. Worst case scenario, this is still an 8-win football team. There's just too much to not like, and there's too much that's returning for ASU to deter you away from like, oh, well, there's no way they're not contenders kind of thing. A worst case, and don't get me wrong, 8 wins with what's coming back would be a disappointment for ASU, for sure. Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football put it best. The expectation is not Big 12 championship or bust, but it's the goal for ASU. We'll see down the road. Maybe it does become conference championship or bust. But ASU is just now cracking into their potential. But this is also where you got to capitalize on that potential. This is the time to make your statement that, yeah, that may be a goal, but moving forward, that is an expectation for this program. That's where you're at right now. Quite frankly, obviously, you win the conference, you're going to the playoff. It's the top 5 conference championship winners that get bids. The Big 12 is always going to have one of the best opportunities to get a bid. ASU is going to the playoff as long as they're a conference champion with double-digit wins, preferably 11 or 12. We'll wait and see. If you get second place, I just don't know that that's good enough. Like I said, if ASU and let's say Baylor go into the Big 12 conference championship game against each other and they're both 11-1, that is your best chance for both teams, winner and loser, to get into the Big 12 championship, but that's still an uphill battle. ASU probably has to win the Big 12 championship. The roster's returning, the coaching staff is working, but don't get me wrong, there is still work to be done on this roster if they are indeed trying to make that run. That's coming up next on the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. From the whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win that first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. And of course, if you win, you're paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or you're just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One more time, I appreciate you guys for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. ASU, darn good team. They got to win the Big 12. How are they going to do that? Well, they have got to build on some certain areas. This is not a perfect ASU team last year. There was definitely some spots that they definitively needed to get better. I think that there's 3 big spots that ASU must improve on. And if they don't, they're going to be a fun team. Maybe they are a playoff team, but their odds are they're outside looking in kind of thing. You could sneak in, but I don't think you would be getting a lot of hype to win it all. 3 things I got to work on. 1 on offense, 1 on defense, 1 on special teams. You already know what special teams is going to be, though. First of all, on offense, what can ASU build on? They can build on Sam Leavitt, and they need Sam Leavitt to build on the success. He was phenomenal this past season. Second team all-conference as a redshirt freshman. He was one of the best redshirt freshmen in the country. He was the highest graded freshman in the country, ahead of Jeremiah Smith, the superstar receiver from Ohio State. Sam Leavitt is terrific, and there was so many good things that he did in the second half of the season. And he won a lot of football games, and he threw a lot of touchdowns. He still has to be better. There's some consistency that needs to be worked on for sure. And I think that there's just some mechanics that could be fine-tuned. The accuracy has to get better. He was in that 60% range. I'm not saying he's got to get to 70, but he's going to improve that percentage at least 5 or 6%. He's got to be closer to 70. He's got the weapons to do it. Jordyn Tyson is back. Shimon Mateer's back. Mateer's going to be a touchdown machine. Tyson is going to be competing for the Fred Biletnikoff Award as the nation's top receiver. The coaching is back too. I already mentioned Marcus Arroyo and Sam Leavitt will continue to work together to take that next step forward as an elite quarterback. And I mean, this is a next level player too. Sam Leavitt could easily turn into an NFL caliber starter and a first round pick. But he's got to continue to be developed and get better by himself. It's not just the coaching. It's not just the players around him. Leavitt has to get better by himself as a quarterback. He does that this year, you're going to be cooking. And there's a lot he's losing. Cam Skattebo, ASU has a lot of proving with Cam Skattebo gone now. That was one of the greatest players in the history of the program. And he almost single-handedly carried you to a college football playoff win against Texas. Cam Skattebo isn't in that game. First of all, I don't think you're in the playoffs. Second of all, you definitely are not making it a game with Texas the way that he came on in that game. He was phenomenal. He was, for goodness sake, he was the Peach Bowl MVP on the losing team. That's how pivotal he was. So now it's going to be on Sam Leavitt to step up and be that guy. He has to be Cam Skattebo. He has to be the one that carries everything. We'll see if he can. Again, JT is back, and you're bringing back Shimon Mateer. There's a lot of new faces. Jalen Moss, the wide receiver from Fresno State, I have a sneaky feeling he is going to be your number 2 receiver. Don't forget about Malik McClain, who had 2 catches in the playoff, both of them over 40 yards. One of them was a touchdown reception from Cam Skattebo in the Texas Longhorns game in the Peach Bowl. He's back. Jalen Moss is back. I already mentioned they've got some other receivers as well. Noble Johnson will be returning. Jaron Hamilton is coming back. I think Hamilton probably ends up being your deep threat for this team. There's guys there. Kanye Udo is going to be probably the star running back here, but everyone knows I'm huge on Kyson Brown, and I think Kyson is in for a breakout season. Raleek Brown is back there to catch the football. Jason Brown, redshirt freshman, is going to be there. They've got the depth in the backfield to be able to help out. You've also got some younger tight ends too. I know that Shimon Mateer is back. They brought in I got to check his last name. Kamari Anderson. I always want to say Wilson. Kamari Anderson coming in from Kentucky. They got A.J. Ia. They got Jaden Fortier. The weapons are there. The offensive line's returning. They're only going to continue to get better. But he's got to take that step forward. Sam Leavitt takes that step forward. That's the biggest chance for you to continue to get better. Number 2, though, on the defense, they're good. We need numbers. ASU last year did not get nearly as many sacks as we needed them to, which is a bummer because they've got some legitimately good pass rushers. Clayton Smith, I've been hyping him up for years. Prince Dorbah was banged up last year. He was still quality. Elijah O'Neal broke out last year, and I still think he could be better. That's just your edge rushers. And Brian Ward is a very good defensive coordinator. One of the goals that Brian Ward told me, the first year he was out here, the first year he got hired, he told me the standard he has for his defenses are 40 sacks and 30 turnovers. If ASU gets 40 sacks and 30 turnovers, you can consider them a heavyweight favorite to win the national title, especially if Leavitt takes that step forward. And I don't need 40 sacks and 30 turnovers, but I do need at least 25 to 30 sacks, which they didn't get this year. And I need closer to 20 turnovers, which they were in that ballpark as well. You really just, more than anything, they got to get the sacks, man. Like the pressure's there, the knockdowns are there, all that good stuff. Sacks can be an overrated stat at times, but when you're not getting sacks, that's when it becomes an issue. And the Sun Devils need to be able to start bringing down the quarterback at a more consistent and high-level pace. They can start doing that. I mean, they're only going to get better on defense. And you've got a lot of very good football players coming back, none more so than Keyshawn Elliott and Xavier Alford. Those two are going to be contenders for all conference teams. Again, Xavier was first team, Keyshawn was second team. There's no reason they can't do that again. You got the youngsters up front. You've got tons of depth nearly at every single position. There's a chance that they are able to take a very good unit and turn it into a great unit next year. We're going to have to wait and see, but that's going to be another step. And then finally, special teams, we just need the consistency. We need the consistency. Jesus Gomez, hopefully he fixes the kicking problem. ASU was barely above 50% this year with 3 different kickers. Jesus Gomez, he is coming in from Eastern Michigan, between 75 to 80% on his career field goal percentage. It depends on if you include all 3 years, because there was a really down year in there. So if you did include all 3 years, it's about 75%. If you were to kind of give him a mulligan and say, that was kind of a tough year, he's closer to 80%. Either way, that's a lot better than what ASU had last year. If you can get 70 to 80%, you're going to be in a much better spot. And then Kenyon Floyd, the true sophomore punter, he's just got to be more consistent. He was able to boom it sometimes, and then there were punts where he couldn't even remotely flip the field. You need the consistency there, and you need to be able to make your field goals. You find a way to do that, you're going to win a lot of football games. Couple that with Sam Leavitt taking that step forward. Who knows? He's got decent odds to win the Heisman Trophy. I know I'm putting some money down on him on FanDuel whenever those odds come out officially. He could carry that team. The defense could carry that team. In a perfect world where all of this comes together, Sam Leavitt plays at a Heisman level. The defense is one of the, we'll say, 20 best in the country, and the special teams is just average. ASU is going to be a heavyweight favorite. Heavyweight favorite. Not just for the Big 12, but to contend for a national title. The returning roster, the returning coaching staff, the young stars, the transfer additions, and if these areas improve, they are a serious, serious contender to win a national title. What do you guys think? Are you thinking what I'm thinking and heading to a national title? Or you think ASU is still another year, 2, or more away from getting to that point? Let me know what you think in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter, RichieBrads36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. You get an update whenever we post new content that way. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in, and a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Like I said, we will be back again on Monday to take a look at the national title game between Notre Dame and Ohio State with a twist, because we got to talk about what those teams have done that ASU could replicate to get themselves into the national title game next year. So I'll see you on Monday. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.